I don't think we've ever done the Young Turks before. This might be a first.
Yeah, I actually like the Young Turks. For the most part, I feel like they do good stuff. And even though they have a bit of a liberal bias, they go on record and actually attack President Obama on his, deeds like stuff like campaign finance or, Edward Snowden. They're actually behind him 100%. So,
that's good.
Yeah, so there are some really good stuff. But this story right here, yeah.
All the bogus fear-mongering coming around from the Fukushima nuclear disaster. We covered this in pretty big detail all that time ago, and I even linked to that one blog where a nuclear scientist actually put all the data. But listen to what these guys are saying.
Some of the first responders in Japan after the tsunami and earthquake are now developing serious health issues because of the Fukushima nuclear reactor. So some of the ailments that members of our own Navy are suffering from right now include cancer, thyroid disease, and uterine bleeding.
Jesus.
One person by the name of Lindsay Cooper says the following: "My thyroid is so out of whack that I can lose 60 to 70 pounds in 1 month and then gain it back the next. My menstrual cycle lasts for 6 months at a time, and I cannot get pregnant. It's ruined me."
Now, what's interesting about all these claims is, first, there's no coherency whatsoever among them. They're just a hodgepodge of symptoms. And second, none of them are actually the symptoms of radiation poisoning. I mean, this is Ellen Brockovich all over again.
Because it's nuclear. It's a evil nuclear monster and such, and it's going to destroy us all. And it's funny because weren't they on a nuclear sub?
Yeah, the Ronald Reagan, it wasn't a sub. The Ronald Reagan was a nuclear aircraft carrier. But understand the Ronald Reagan was over 100 miles away from the plant at the time.
Jeez, man, hearing the stories of what happened to those guys on the USS Ronald Reagan when they went to go help is devastating. I mean, one story after another it just rips your guts inside. And what they're saying is, look, the Japanese government told us it was safe, and mainly it was not the Japanese government as much as the actual electric company who's operating the plant, who said, "Oh, don't worry about it."
Of course, they're going to say that.
Yeah.
Anytime you're dealing with radiation and a nuclear reactor, you have to go against what someone is telling you and go with your better judgment.
Look. Unless you're a nuclear frickin' physicist, you don't have a better judgment about that. You just have the paranoia of an ignorant populace who doesn't understand what radiation is or how it can damage you. It's no different from the moon hoaxer saying no one can survive the Van Allen belts. No different.
At least 70 have been stricken with some form of radiation sickness, and of those, at least half are suffering from some form of cancer.
Notice how she doesn't give any context to these figures. Basically, we end up with 35 people have cancer. Out of how many? And what risk groups were they in?
Yeah, that's odd. I mean, 35 out of what?
Well, the total crew complement of the Ronald Reagan is 3,200 shipmen and 2,480 airmen for a total of 5,680 crewmen. And 35 of those got cancer. That's 0.6%. But I guess if this idiot woman said 0.6% of the crew got cancer, she wouldn't be able to scare anyone.
Yeah, it's all fear-mongering to basically sell headlines, to get YouTube hits. And that's the real sad truth here.
Well, 0.6% is 600 per 100,000. Now, it's been over 2.5 years since the disaster. That's an annual incidence rate of about 250 per 100,000. It's about the same annual incidence rate of women getting breast cancer and the annual incidence rate of prostate cancer among African Americans. And that risk increases with age, so chances are we probably would have seen about 35 people from that ship get cancer during that same time period.
Yeah, there's the stats right there, and it's not really that terrifying. They should actually do some actual reporting.
Well, and the way radiation sickness works, if you can survive the first few weeks after exposure to radiation, you're basically good. The only risk you have beyond that is an increased risk of cancer. While you might experience weight loss during those weeks, after that there's no indication whatsoever that radiation will keep causing these sudden weight loss and gains and loss and gains. And while it might damage your thyroid, the damage would make it less active, not hyperactive.
Again, not good reporting.
No, just some fact-checking here, people.
Yeah, a little fact-checking, you realize it's not that not horrible. And by the way, you have like 5,200 people on this huge aircraft carrier, only 35 of them get sick. You have to look and say, maybe there's something, BS about this whole thing.
Well, let's get something clear about this. The explosion at the plant was not a nuclear explosion. It was a chemical explosion due mainly to hydrogen gas. And there's something else we also need to keep in mind as we go through this. There's a difference between radiation and radioactive material. Light is a form of radiation. Heat is a form of radiation. Microwaves, radio waves, all these are radiation. We're talking about a certain kind of radiation here, which is emitted by radioactive particles. Radioactive material is material that emits radiation. There are radioactive isotopes that emit different kinds of radiations, and the Young Turks don't say which material they're talking about, because they clearly don't even understand this themselves, but since they're talking about thyroid issues, it's most likely they're talking about iodine-131. And this is a byproduct of uranium-235 fission. I-131 has a half-life of only 8 days, so it'll be pretty much back down to background levels in a few weeks, and by that time, it's done all the damage it's going to do. So keep that in mind as we listen further.
Because people got so sick, everybody on board started having uncontrollable diarrhea.
If they had diarrhea that quickly after exposure, the radiation poisoning would have killed them in a very short time. Since they're not dead 2.5 years later, I think we can safely conclude that something else caused the diarrhea. So, again, what we have here is some people got diarrhea on a ship with over 5,000 crew members.
Yeah. Again, it seems like the Young Turks did not do any fact-checking or research here. And it's just really disappointing because this is basically a YouTube channel they actually seem to have some points. They do get on point, but this is just, wow, how can they fail so hard on this? It is amazing.
Oh, we're just getting started.
From my reading of the case, it appears the biggest problem was that the radiation was in the water. And they take the water in and desalinate it and then use it in the faucets, the showers, etc. So they were all showering, literally showering in that radioactive water.
Well, seawater has to be desalinated to remove the salt to make it fit for drinking and bathing. Since radioactive ions are larger than salt molecules, the desalinization process removes those too. There won't be any radioactive material left in water that's gone through desalinization.
So, again, they're basically talking from their rear ends. So,
yeah.
No fact-checking and no real hard reporting. Why aren't you looking more into it? Why aren't you doing more fact-checking? Why aren't you doing this stuff instead of just saying, instead of trying to get more YouTube hits, let's look at the real hard data. Let's look at the real news or the real story. But instead, they just do this.
Unless it's just about their view counts.
Yeah.
Don't trust what the Japanese government is saying. Don't trust what the electric power company is saying. Go, get out of there, right? Get as far away from that plant as you can.
I mean, it's not like we don't know anything about the hazards of radiation and how to deal with it. Well, these morons might not, but the people on the Ronald Reagan followed the proper procedure for cleaning away any radioactive material that might have been in the dust cloud that settled on the ship. And since the Ronald Reagan is a nuclear aircraft carrier, I think we can conclude that there are people on board who know how to deal with that situation. They have the instruments on board to detect radiation. They wouldn't have to trust the Japanese government or the power company or whoever. They could just detect it themselves.
That's true. And why didn't they talk about this stuff in the report? Bad reporting. And that's what the Young Turks did here. Terrible reporting. No one on their staff said, we should be fact-checking this. Look at this stuff so, stuff like this won't happen.
I believe we just showed you the radioactive snow. And, you saw how much it was. They're literally surrounded by the radioactive material. So it's understandable why so many of the guys on the aircraft carrier and women got so sick.
You moron, that's not radioactive snow, that's soapy water. The people on the USS Ronald Reagan are cleaning the deck with soapy water.
Wow, just terrible stuff.
You can look at the picture and tell it's soapy water. Why would he think that's radioactive snow?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, I don't care what other good things they've said about Edward Snowden or whatever. Calling that radioactive snow, it's soapy water, people.
I don't know what they was looking at. Dude, get your eyes checked. I don't know.
Maybe they think radioactive snow is different or something.
I don't know. It's just maybe it gives you superpowers. Maybe that's it. But it's just really bad reporting and just outright stupidity on the Young Turks. People, if you don't know the difference between radioactive snow or soapy water, please go and run and play in traffic. Trust me, it'd be best if you don't breed and continue the human species. That'd be nice.